Hi, I'm Diane Canada. Welcome to the Lady Up podcast today. So glad you're here. Thanks so much for tuning in. Ladies, today I'm really going to ask you to turn off all your distractions to really lean into this conversation today. My guest today is a Jewish woman. She's a friend of mine, but she currently has family living in Israel. She's got a lot of gaps that she can help fill in for us on why Iran hates Israel so much. What is really the underbelly of this Iranian and Israeli conflict? So that's what we're going to dive into today. And that's what I'm going to call the podcast today, the underbelly of the Iran-Israeli war. Be right back.
Women of America, here's some breaking news. Ain't no cowbrick coming to save the red from the rabid blue. We have the power, time to take the field. Step up and into your ruby red heels. Taking back this house, taking back this town. Mama, don't back down, just lady up, lady up, lady up.
All right, ladies, welcome back. Today's conversation, I hope, is not only going to bless you, but I hope that it's going to really give you a more solid understanding of what's really going on in Israel. Why does Iran hate Israel so much? Why has this holy war been going on for almost 50 years now? What is really the undercurrent? What's the perspective from the people who live in Israel? What's it like to live with incoming fire almost daily, or at least the threat of it? These are all the questions that I think are on so many of our minds. And the person that is going to be helping us fill in those blanks today is a friend of mine. Her name is Eleina Pomerants. And I'm going to just give her the stage today in many ways and let her share her heart with you. As I mentioned, she's got family currently living in Israel. She is a Jew herself, and she's got so much wisdom to bring to this conversation. So please welcome to the show, Eleina Pomerants. Hi, Eleina.
Hi, Dan. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for being here today. I'm so grateful to you in advance because I know this conversation is going to help fill in so many blanks. And I know we have limited time in a podcast. I wish we could sit down for several hours and really talk this out. But I'd really my hope today is that we can give the highlights, really give a deeper understanding between the highlights around this conflict. So let's start by just giving people a little better understanding of who you are. Let me just let you introduce yourself to the audience, and then let's dig into the deep stuff today.
And again, I cannot thank you enough for having me, because the biggest issue right now that is happening is the division and misinformation. And my goal and my hope and my prayer is to start and open the conversation. And it's okay for us to disagree, but still kind of come together and have conversations, and really hard conversations, because part of it is very controversial. It's very difficult. It's painful, but it needs to be had just so we can help people understand what's going on. But at the same time, just be coming from the place of love, understanding, and peace for both sides, for everybody, not just for Israel, not just for Iran, but a lot of people that live in the Arab world that are suffering, and they're suffering not for exactly the reason that's being portrayed in the media a lot of times, unfortunately, which is why I'd love to talk about it. So my background is I'm Jewish. I was born in former Soviet Union in Ukraine. We were blessed to have the opportunity to escape Soviet Union right around the time where the Iron Wall came down in 1989. My family was able to leave, and it was a very long and difficult process, but eventually we were able to get access to refugee status. We've gone through many, many different interviews in the process of becoming legal in the United States. And we came here in 1989 after months and months and months of staying in Europe and basically being nobody. And then just being able to be in America is a huge blessing for us. But a lot of our family lives in Israel, as you mentioned, and some of them actually left in the 50s. Uh, After the World War II, as many Jews have from Europe. And my closest family member is my uncle, my mom's brother, and his son, my cousin, ended up in Israel. Again, we have limited time, so I'm giving you a real short version of
Yeah.
what happened.
Yeah.
Because all of us kind of left together, but they lived in different part of Ukraine, and we couldn't apply at the same time. And unfortunately, they couldn't wait any longer. We left first. They were supposed to leave right after us. And when things got really, really bad in that area of Ukraine, and I'm talking about anti-Semitism, started to rise up really
Yeah.
badly, and things were heating up. Our easiest way was to go to Israel because those were our original visas and way out of
Yeah.
Soviet Union is to go straight to Israel. Some people chose to go to different countries where they had families, and if you didn't want to, you could have just gotten on a plane and went to Israel, which is what they ended up doing, unfortunately, right after we left, and that's how we got separated. And they've been living there ever since. Uh,
Wow. So you chose to come to the United States. And they were going to follow you, but they ended up going to Israel
yep,
instead.
that's right.
Wow. So I know we're not going to be talking about the Russian-Ukraine war today, but I know maybe we'll have you back to talk about that because you have such a unique perspective
Yeah,
to see this from so many different angles. And also being a refugee yourself and acclimating to America, coming here and becoming a legal citizen, there's just so much depth to the conversation that we could have. Gosh, I just wish we could sit here all afternoon and talk. But let's zero in, and I'm going to try to do this too today, to zero in on the Israel and Iran war.
hmm
Because Eleina, I know that you can help us understand this better. Like I feel like let's just start with this. So we know that after World War II, Israel was actually legally given back their homeland. The Jewish people were given back their homeland of Israel in May of 1948.
yes,
And so that's when they actually became a sovereign, recognized state.
yes,
And since then, they have just taken, and not even the whole uh, Holy Land. Like God's God had left for them a much bigger territory than what they actually got.
right.
Um, let's talk for a second about this because help us understand what is the conflict? Why do people feel like they're not entitled to that land, and why are they hated so much in that region?
Well, Diane, I think the major issue, I'm going to start with this, and it's conflict is not so much about the land. It's actually not about the land at all. It is really a very anti Semitic stand. It's always been that way. And it's very hard for people to understand that. I'll give you some examples of proof that this is not about the land. It is
Okay.
literally about Jewish people being there. They just don't want us there, period. It's
Yeah.
always been that way, even though in fact we are indigenous to that land. We have Bible to prove it. We have historical facts to prove it. And Jewish people always lived there, just maybe not so much in those numbers. And obviously people moved around through the regions. We're talking about thousands of years, right? Uh,
Mhm.
but we've always been there. And what made it so inflammatory is when the World War II happened and the European Jews had nowhere else to go because they were literally pushed out of Europe, obviously through the Holocaust and everything else. And so that was a blessing to come home and make the land again. And that just made them so angry. They really honestly didn't want us there. Because if you go back to the original time of, as you said, when Israel was created, there was supposed to be two states. And a lot of people not aware of that. There was supposed to be an Arab state and a Jewish state. And we all were supposed to live together in peace. That
Mm.
was the goal. That never happened for one reason. The reason was that Arabs never agreed to it. They
Mm.
said we want that land to ourselves and we do not agree with it. In fact, that has been happening ever since. There have been many, many times when the peace talks were called by Israel themselves and said, let's sit down and figure this out. There might have been one time that they actually did come to the talks, but majority of times they don't. And even if they do, they just reject it, just like they're
Wow.
rejecting things now. So at the end of the day, if this was really about land, if you look at Israel, Israel has Arabs living in that land.
Right.
Israel has everybody living there. It is
Yeah.
the most democratic country in the Middle East.
Mhm.
We
Yeah.
can't, as a Jewish person, I can't live in any of those countries. In fact, I can't even travel there if I go through Israel. They will block me. I might come from United States straight there, but I wouldn't be very safe there. But
Yeah.
and it's so at the end of the day, is it really about land? And I'll give you another example. But everything that's happening right now with pro-Palestinian movement and
Mhm.
things that are happening in college campuses. What do Jewish student children who have nothing to do with the land of Israel have to do with this conflict for these people to prevent them from going to classes, from doing daily activities, for literally harassing Jewish people in the streets of New York City?
Yeah.
Has to be a question in people's minds. If this was really about land and not pure anti Semitism, why are Jewish people around the world being harassed?
Yeah. Yeah. And I have my theory. I did the show that I did last week. I laid a lot of that out. So I'm just going to tease people and encourage you to go back and watch last week's show. But I'm much more concerned about your theory. So if it's not about the land, it's about the people, then what drives the hate toward the Jewish people?
That is $1 million question. People have different theories on it, and I don't know if there is a real answer to it, other than the fact the hate has been instilled in a lot of people, by generations through generations without them asking you questions. I'm going to give you a perfect example. I had met a wonderful woman here who became very, very friendly here in Nashville. She is originally from Egypt. Well, she thinks she was born in Canada, but she's Egyptian. Her family's from Egypt. She was born in Canada, deep roots in Egypt, Muslim, obviously. But her
Mhm.
and I connected just as people, and we had a beautiful relationship up until October 7th, when the war
Oh,
started. And then the
wow.
conversations about the war started to come up. And all I wanted to do was to sit down and have just an open and honest conversation, hear her story, for her to hear her view, and then for me to have, to share my view, and just us to see how we can come together. And what
Hmm.
I've heard back from her is this, which was kind of very sad to me, but she said to me, my parents always told me that Israel is bad. That's what I was born with. That's what I always knew. And it has to be true. How could they be wrong?
Wow.
And
So she's just dug it. She's just really clinging to the belief system that she grew up with and doesn't even know why she believes it.
that's right. And it's not like she actually didn't have any issues. I have nothing against Jewish people. I have a problem with Israel. And then when I started asking her, so what exactly is your problem with Israel? She says, well, they
Yeah.
don't treat Palestinians well. As well, not really true, but and I tried to have that conversation that didn't go well. And no matter what I did, but at the end of the day, when she said that phrase to me, that's when the bells went off. It is a generational propaganda,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
I understand why. If I put myself in her shoes, I love my parents. I love my grandparents. I believe them.
Mhm.
If they would have told me something, I would have probably believed that that was true.
Yeah. Yeah. And this goes back generation after generation after generation, all the way back to biblical times. And something that I think a lot of people don't know is where the name Israel even came from. Um, Israel is the name that God gave Jacob, correct?
Yes, that's
Um,
true.
and that Jacob being the son of Isaac, right? Who
That's
was the son of Abraham. So the name Israel was God's name given to Jacob and said to go and these are my people and I am their God. And this was the promised land that he gave them. This is what Moses, the parting of the Red Sea and all those 40
that.
years in the desert and all of it was leading to was the promised land. This is Israel, right, Eleina?
Yeah, that's the truth. But again, we have to be careful because now it's kind of coming back, and I hear people tell me, say, well, promised land, of course, sure, now you could just grab it because it was promised to you. Because not everybody unfortunately understand the whole biblical aspect of it. So I'm trying to speak to people from the more modern perspective, right?
Yeah.
And again, what you said is absolutely correct. And it's easier to talk to people who read the Bible and understand the history. Then we can have that conversation. But we're talking right now, majority of people who are loud and hateful don't
Yeah.
know that part and not interested. In fact, that same person that I was telling you about, when I asked her about it, she said, I'm not interested in history or a bit of a Bible. And so here comes the issue. So now we have to bring it to, let's talk facts. Let's talk about more recent things. And the fact of the matter is that was a desolate land that had absolutely nothing in it. And
Yeah.
all Jewish people did is they came home. And if you look at the pictures from before and after 1948, in a
Yeah.
very short period of time, it transformed.
Yes.
So we can see
Yes.
one hand, that's a hand of God.
Yes, it is. Absolutely.
All
Yes.
these farms that are growing in a desert, the
Yeah.
innovations in agriculture alone that Israel was able to accomplish cannot be done without God's help.
Yeah.
But
And
that,
that's what we share in common with between Israel and America. This is what we share in common is the sovereignty, the providence of God, God's blessing and his favor on our countries. Things that happen that there's no other explanation for except the hand of God.
that's right. And then again, that's one argument. The other argument for people who don't see it that way, the just how in the world, forget the God aspect of it. How would somebody be able to create that? And
Yeah.
everything
Yeah.
done, 75 years is nothing. It's
Yeah.
absolutely nothing to
And
grow.
tell people what all comes out of Israel, Eleina. I mean, like, they're a huge exporter of agriculture. Like what kinds of things are they growing there and exporting out?
Cherry tomatoes, ever heard of them? Kind of
Yeah.
developed there. Seedless
Yeah.
watermelon irrigation system. They've developed this amazing irrigation system. Now the whole world uses. I tell
Yes.
people, I said, look at how tiny this little country is and how much
Yeah.
that they have accomplished in such a short period of time. And I'm going to just go a little bit to the side when you mention agriculture, just to go back to the original point, because that's very important as far as the land grabbing. Everybody calls Israel land grabbers. Okay.
Mhm.
So Sharon, one of the prime minister at Israel, I forget exactly the year when it happened, 15, 20 years ago or so, came to the table again to try to negotiate peace. And part of the agreement was for Israel to give part of their land where settlers live. And those settlements at the edge, one of the settlements that
Mhm.
got attacked on October 7th, those are just agriculture. These people live the most simplest life you could pass. Kibbutz is literally just they don't need anything. They have the simplest housing, the simplest lifestyles. And so Israel gave part of that land, and it was part of agricultural land, to Gaza and say, here, that's fine, let's share. We'll give you, let's accommodate. And then what if we give you part of this land that you say that we're occupy, and then you can have it. And, can we just now have peace?
Yeah.
And you know what happened after that? So that whole strip that they gave, which was part of the actual agreement, they pulled Israelis out of their homes. Israeli government. People were very, very upset about that. But Sharon's like, you know what? Let's just see if this can. We need to make peace. We're sick and tired of being killed and raped
Yeah.
and suicide bombings and all of these things that they were doing to them. And so they said, let's just do that. And then so they physically had to remove people out of their home, just so they can give that land away, which was horrible. But in the name of peace, they did that. They left agriculture equipment there. There was a prosperous land that they could have continued growing food on. They bulldozed it. It's
Oh, wow.
it's
So you're saying Israel uprooted their own people that were settled there.
That's right. Yeah.
Wow.
Just in the name of peace. What else do
Wow.
you want us to do? Here, do you want a part this? Let's make a peace agreement. What if we give you that piece of land? You can go back, and I don't want to misquote things, but I could send you the link, and you can definitely look it up of when it exactly happened. But it didn't do anything, and that was just a proof to, what else can we do? They just don't want to agree on anything.
Yeah.
But at the same time, there are lots and lots of Arabs that live in Israel, and a lot of them are happy to live their next door neighbors to a Jewish person, and they just want peace. They're happy. They live in the land that offers prosperity. They can go to school. They have, go to hospital, get medical treatment, just like an Israeli can. There is no
Yeah.
difference. And a lot of them are citizens of Israel. A lot of them actually in the IDF. A lot of them are part of the police force.
Is that right?
That's right. And just like any citizens in the United States, when you come to this country, it doesn't matter where you came from. You're in a democratic country. Everybody has equal rights. It's exact same thing in Israel.
Huh. So an Arab could be fighting in the IDF against Iran.
In fact, they do.
In fact, they do. Wow. So those people who had been so indoctrinated by the propaganda and all of that, they actually came to see that they had been misled and then pledged their allegiance to Israel to become a citizen there and then fight for them.
And a lot of them actually, it's difficult for them because some of them do have family in their respective countries where their lineage is, or where their
Yeah.
family still exists, and could be any of those Muslim countries surrounding Israel. And a lot of
Wow.
them reject them for being there. But at the
I'm
end of the
sure.
day, people just like my uncle actually, he's one of his doctors is an Arab, and I believe his roots are from Palestine, from that land. And he lives in Israel. He's a citizen of Israel, but he's not Jewish. He's Muslim, and he can
Yeah.
still practice being Muslim. There's nothing against that. He got an education, became a doctor, a very successful doctor, and has a very good life. Whereas people who live in Palestine have nothing, and it had at no fault of Israel. It only has to do with Hamas, who took hold of the land in 2007 completely. When Israel said we absolutely have no power anywhere there, and as of 2007, Hamas has been completely in charge of that part. And instead of making that land prosperous, which they had the money to, they took that money, build the tunnels that are very, very expensive, just so they can crawl into Israel and create mischief and do all these horrible things. And
Yeah.
uh, rockets or whatever money that they've invested into just fighting, instead of giving it to the people and making a good life for them. They could have. It's
Yeah.
actually a really pretty area right on the shore, and it could have been a prosperous, but instead they're born with that hate. They're teaching their family members to hate Jewish people, to hate Israel, that Israel is an enemy, instead of saying there is a way to come together and just stop fighting, we could coexist, but they just don't want to. The answer is really that simple. They do not want to. They've given many, many opportunities to stop it. But at the same time, and this is where this whole contradict Israel becomes the aggressor. They're not. They're the ones who constantly have to defend themselves against all these attacks that are constantly, constantly happening. It never stopped. It's ever since the existence of Israel. Never stopped.
That area of the Gaza Strip that Hamas has taken over, that we talked about, where the attack on October 7th was instigated on Israel, that is what you're referring to as Palestine,
Correct.
that Gaza Strip. So
Yeah.
is there really such a thing? Because this was the question that had come up for me many times. People had asked me, is Palestine a real place? And what I found really interesting about that, and I'd love your take on this, but what I found really interesting, if you go back again, I don't think you can explain this without the biblical context in any reasonable way. But looking at that Gaza Strip, that's the exact same piece of land that the ancient Philistines
That's right.
lived in, that came against Israel.
That's right.
So I believe this is spiritual war. This is a spiritual battle with ancient gods, ancient spirits that drive this kind of hatred toward the Jewish people. But can you help us clear up that Palestinian-Palestine conflict, or misunderstanding?
There is no misunderstanding. It's just people created that misunderstanding because, as you said, there is no real country of Palestine. It was never really created. The
Right.
world, they use the word, and it's been there. It actually been called the Palestine, the land, but it wasn't just because of one group of people lived there. Prior to that, there were Philistines who no longer exist, in fact, but they were
Right.
also not big friends of Jewish people either. So I think at some point the word got kind of twisted, and that's where the Palestine comes from because of the Philistine Palestine. I'm not really sure how that all connected because
I
these are
think
people.
yeah, I heard, and I'm like you, I may have misunderstood this, but I believe I heard Jonathan Kahn or someone like that say that Palestine or Palestinian is the modern word for Philistine in some
That's right.
translation.
That's what
I
people
think,
say. I'll be honest with you, I haven't dug deep enough to understand it. I
yeah,
believe that's how the word got adopted. But at
yeah,
the same time, my confusion with this is this. Again, Philistines do not exist anymore, right?
right.
People who live in Palestine are Arabs who came from countries that exist right now, like Egypt and
Mm-hmm,
Jordan,
mm-hmm.
and it was a mixture of different Arabs that came together and now live in that land. Why suddenly this is a Palestine? I'm not quite sure how that all came about, to be honest with you.
Yeah,
But
yeah. I happen to think that it's a very convenient um, political chant. I think it's just a way to. Uh, I think they just make. I think they just fixate on things. The left, the progressive left, and just really people. It really doesn't even have so much to do with our American politics as much as it is so much anti-Semitism and all that. So a
that's
lot of our country has been infiltrated so much by so many of these Arab and foreign nationals that hate the Jewish people. So I think they're kind of just twisting things and turning things and then pulling in well-meaning Americans into these chants and into these ancient and very maniacal uh, ideologies. And when they chant things like, from the river to the sea, I was listening to something last night and they were talking about, someone was explaining that everything that the devil does is an inversion, right? So God said, from the sea to the river, I give you. And now they're saying they want Israel annihilated from the river to the sea. Everything is an inversion and a counterfeit from the enemy when we're talking about God's intentions, or God's words. when I want to touch on something you said a second ago, and then I'd like to go to another question I have for you. But when people say that Israel is not innocent, or that Israel has blood on their own hands, or that Israel is the aggressor, you touched on that a second ago. Do you have any idea why people misinterpret that? Is it, obviously they're being provoked all the time. They're being attacked from all sides all the time. They've just got this constant threat looming all around just because they exist. But have you ever seen any evidence that Israel has been the aggressor unprovoked?
So I've been to Israel, and I've actually been to the borders, and I've seen where Gaza is and where Jordan is and where all the borders are. And they took us around, and talked to a lot of people. And I constantly also talk to my family, and our family who's been there. Like I mentioned, some of my distant relatives have been living there since the 50s. And when I feel like you said, most of it is propaganda, and the people are just being fed certain information that makes sense to them and easy to agree, just because it's just pure anti-Semitism. That's all it is.
Yeah.
And for some reason, it's really easy to hate Jews. I don't know why. I grew up with that feeling, even in former Soviet Union, that had nothing to do with Israel, and yet I got beat up when I was 11 years old really badly by my classmate because I was Jewish. And so it had nothing to do with Israel. Back to
I'm
that.
so sorry.
No, it's okay. It made me who I am, made me stronger. I never felt like a victim. I still never do. I think things that happen to us through life, it just makes us who we are.
Yeah.
And it was just one of those things that happened to me. But again, that had nothing to do with it, right? And so
Yeah.
when people say Israel is the aggressor, first thing I tell them, I said, have you looked at the map lately?
Yeah.
Israel is slightly smaller than New Jersey. And if
Right.
anybody knows how big New Jersey is, it's a little extension of New York City. It's tiny. That's
Yeah.
the size of, I drove, Israel is long and thin. I think it's about 2 hour drive from border to border on this side, and maybe 4 or 5 hours this side. And,
Wow.
and then you have these giant countries around them that hate them, that literally have missiles pointing at them. This is why they have the dome, because otherwise Israel would cease to exist.
Right.
If they have not had that? And so to call them an aggressor when you look at that big picture is just so ironic to me. How is it even possible? They're tiny,
Yeah.
not be an
Yeah.
aggressor. And
Yeah.
ID literally stands for Israeli Defense Force, that
Yeah.
was formed in 1948 in necessity so they can defend themselves. Jewish people were never really fighters or aggressors ever. In fact, this is why we were marched into the concentration camps, into the gas chambers, because we were so submissive, unfortunately, which is
Yeah.
happening now, which is a whole other conversation, why we're, God forbid, to have a mayor in New York City that shouldn't be, because,
Yeah.
and a lot of Jewish people support him. But it's just, we'd never had it in us to fight or be aggressive. Never did.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
developed in 1948 out of necessity. Every single war that was started, it was started because the attack happened on Israel. In fact, the same thing happened now, but of course, CNN doesn't tell that to people.
No. No.
Iran was the one that sent a rocket to Israel, and all these proxies that are around, and just irritating and instigating. And all Israel wants to do is to leave us alone and let us be. But
Yeah.
they
Yeah.
can't. And if they don't fight back, they will cease to exist. That's just a simple fact. So I'm not
Yeah.
sure.
Except for the sovereign hand of God. We'll just say that, like,
That's
God promises
out
in the
and clear.
Bible to shield. Yeah. But in the natural, yeah.
Yeah.
But God's protection is on Israel. Nobody will ever defeat Israel. And
No.
if we look at so many nations that have tried, all of them almost, well, certainly all the ones, in before our generation,
Right.
they cease to exist. The Babylonians are gone. The Roman Empire is gone. I mean, you just look at all of the people that have come against Israel. Philistines, like you mentioned earlier, you know, these people are all gone and Israel still stands.
That's right.
God will protect Israel. And I just want to point this out in case someone does not take the time to go back and listen to last week's episode, which I really, really hope you will, ladies. But I want to point out that the Jewish people and the Christians are connected. I used to think, Eleina, and I'm sorry that I thought this, but I used to think that the Jewish people wouldn't go to heaven because, those of us that are Christians, we believe that Jesus is the Messiah, and he says, I am the way, the truth, the life, and nobody comes to the Father except through me. That is true for us. But the problem, I guess it's not even a problem, but what I have come to see is that the Jewish people are God's chosen people. They are protected. They are going to spend eternity with God. And we as Christians, Gentiles, as you will, were grafted into that covenant he made with Abraham and Isaac and Jacob. And so we are all a family we are all loved and protected by God. And so, the Jewish people are our brothers and sisters. And eventually, I know many are still believing that they're waiting on their Messiah. They don't know that they don't believe that Jesus was necessarily their Messiah. But I think it's important for us to understand when Iran calls Israel the little Satan and America the big Satan, which again is an inversion, right? Because they're the ones that are all about the violence and destruction, everything God is against. But this is how they twist things up. But they see us as connected. Even the enemy sees us as connected.
That's right. It's again, biblically and historically, but most importantly biblically, by the hand of God, obviously Israel is protected by God, and we discussed that there's no way that this would ever exist the way it is right now. That little piece of land that it's so, at the end of the day, no matter what all these countries do to them, they're still prosperous.
Yes.
They're still there, and they're not going anywhere. So it's totally the hand of God. For sure.
Yeah.
No doubt about it. It's just very hard to deny. But, again, I'm trying to reach out to everyone. It's easier.
Yeah.
I find it much easier to talk to Christian people, because people who read the Bible and educated, and Jewish people who are Messianic people like myself who read the Bible, who understand, and we can have this conversation on a biblical level much, much easier. What is happening right now, for the most part, it's people who do not or don't see it that way. And I think it's important to open up that conversation and talk about not just from biblical perspective, from all just the reality and fact that are hand. And I just want to mention something when we're talking about Israel being an aggressor. What's coming back to me often is, how could you defend them? They're killing children in Palestine. I'm going to address that really fast.
Yeah, please.
This is war. Are people dying? 100%. Are people suffering on both sides? Always. All wars are bad. Nobody wants a war. People always die at wars. But here's what I want people to ponder on. When these numbers are coming out, and they're coming out in some crazy, and again, my heart goes out to innocent. I don't want to see dead children. No. Unlike what people tell me, apparently they think I like that. I don't. I don't think a single Israeli like to see that at all. Innocent should not, especially children. But here's the thing. All of these numbers that are being spewed at us are coming from Ministry of Health of Hamas. Let's think about that for a minute.
Not exactly a trusted source.
Not exactly a trusted source.
Yeah.
Again, I'm not saying that it's not happening. It is definitely happening.
Yeah.
The major problem that is happening also is what they really like to do, what they got really good at, is putting innocent people in harm's way.
Right.
So they can say that Israel is killing innocent people. It is really that simple.
Yeah.
And when people understand that, the whole bombing of the hospital, there was no people in that hospital that was supposed to be in that hospital. And, when they were right in the beginning of the war and all of these things, and they really doing it on purpose, just so the world can see, aha, I'm going to take it a step further. And I'll tell you what they really do, what a lot of people are not aware. They actually create horrible videos on purpose, and they've got caught doing it multiple times, where they create the video of dead people, and all of a sudden you'll see, like, the the white wrapped up blanket starts to move, and the blood is really the paint, just to
Oh,
worse. It has happened, and it's actually a fact. And it's been done throughout the years. It's nothing to do with October 7th. It's just magnified. And
wow.
people believe that. And it's hard not
Yeah.
to, if you don't know the facts. And
Yeah.
most people, from what I see, especially in the United States, and I'm not blaming anybody, I don't want to call anybody uneducated or anything like that. It's really hard. It's far from here. This is not the part of the world people are familiar with. It's not the
Yeah.
part of the world that people study in school. It's just very hard to wrap a head around it, because it really is a very, very complex situation. And
Yeah.
the only people that are really kind of can explain, and this is why I love to talk to people who are from there, a Jewish
Yeah.
person has a family there, a Jewish person who lived there. I have a best friend who've been friends since college, in Moldova, back in former Soviet Union, and she lived in Israel for many, many years herself, and she still
Mhm.
keeps going back. And she just recently was there, almost like right before this whole fiasco started and everything, and you hear from their perspective. And all we have to do is just look at facts, listen to
Yeah.
people, and stop listening to propaganda, and
Yeah.
understand that this is, again, not about the land. Because I'm going to, sorry, one more example. I have so much to talk about. It's really hard.
No, please.
When one of the things you mentioned, river to the sea, I want to just address a couple of those things, because it's very important. People don't understand when they're chanting river to the sea, and you mentioned that it literally is to obliterate Israel. People don't
Right.
understand what's happening. Intifada. You know what
Yeah.
globalized intifada means? It's calling for the death. When
Yeah.
intifada happened, they literally raped and killed Jewish people. And that's what they're calling to do again.
Yeah.
Globalized intifada literally means kill Jewish people around the world. And the apartheid state, this is actually quite funny. If you look up the word apartheid, it actually comes from, when in Africa, when the racial division started. So it has to
Hmm.
do with division of race, like races
Right.
coexist together. If you look at Israel, especially for Old City, for example, Old City has four parts to it in Jerusalem. There's an Arab part, there's a Christian part, Jewish part, and Armenian. People don't know that. And there are churches in there, and there are prospective things, and you can go in, and then you could see all the different religions and different people coexisting in a tiny little place. Okay,
Hmm.
that's first. And then we're talking about Jerusalem is that's like the most historical city, and then and then it's the oldest, and that's where a lot of religious people live also. Tel Aviv is just like New York City. It's very modern. It's opposite of Jerusalem. But Jerusalem is where basically Bible comes to life. But here's
Yeah.
what's interesting, another one. So you standing in an old city where the remnants of the original temple, the wall where people go to pray
Yeah.
at the Kotel, Western Wall, right behind it is the Dome of Rock, right? Dome of
Hmm.
Rock is the most holiest of holy places, supposedly where Muhammad ascended from,
Yeah.
according to the Muslim religion. So that's the
Yeah.
holy place where Jewish people are not allowed to go. It's right there in Jerusalem.
Yeah. Yep.
They don't go there. It's separated. I was there during the Shabbat service. It was the most amazing spiritual connection. Like they call it local call to God there. Like it's,
Hmm.
and
Wow.
it was such a beautiful event. We prayed, we danced, we ate, we celebrated. It was beautiful. It's just absolutely. When Shabbat was over, there was singing on the other side, on the Muslim side, right
Really?
behind the wall. Yeah. I don't know if they were doing it to just a counter, but maybe they were just a prayer night. I don't know. But nobody bothered each other, but they separated by the wall. But my point is the apartheid state just doesn't apply. I'm sorry. If there are people from every walk of life and every religion can live there, this just doesn't work. So,
Yeah.
but yet, when people say it and they repeat it, Israel is an apartheid state, they're land grabbers, and this and that and the other, all of these things that are being thrown from TikTok or Instagram or what have you,
Yeah.
people start to believe it. And I think
Yeah.
it's our job to just, try to separate that and speak the truth, speak the facts. And I pray every single day for peace for all. I pray for peace for Israel. I pray for peace for my family of protection. My family's been in bunkers every single night, pretty much every day since the most recent fiasco.
Well,
We know people connected to October 7th massacres. It is heart wrenching of what they're going through. But I
Yeah.
promise you that Israelis want peace just like anybody else, normal people do. They
Yeah.
want this fighting. They didn't ask for it. In fact, some of the first people who were murdered on October 7th were peacekeepers.
Wow.
One of the older gentlemen, he would used to drive people from Gaza on his car to get medical help in the hospital and in Israel, because Israel gives them medical help if they need it. They
Yeah.
don't get denied. So
Yeah.
Naama Levy, whose unfortunate image of her bloody pants was plastered after she was raped and kidnapped all over the internet, was one of the peacekeepers. She was in high school. She was a part of this group where they were connecting to girls in Gaza and opening conversations, trying to talk to each other, trying to be friendly, and trying to bridge that gap. So she
Yeah.
was, everybody, oh, she's an idea fighter. They were in a watchtower, these girls, these 19-year-old girls, in the watchtower over the radio. Their job is on the radio to send out messages and warnings and things like that, which was completely disconnected that day, but that's a story for another day. But people don't know that. I want people to know that
Yeah.
Israelis don't want it. They really don't. Now, do we live in the perfect world and everybody's the same? No. And if somebody points out to this person, a Jewish person, and say, "Oh no, they're bad people. Oh, this is an Arab person. Oh, they're a bad person." There's bad people everywhere. I'm not saying, I don't have pink glasses into the world.
Yeah. Rose-colored glasses. Yeah.
All right, yeah,
Mhm.
rose-colored glasses. I'm speaking the truth. I'm speaking the reality, and I want
Yeah.
people to understand that I don't want the division. I would be the first one to say, if you want, this is why I became friends to somebody who was Muslim here. I have Muslim friends.
Yeah.
Not to this day, I have Muslim friends, and we have normal conversation. We have a really good friend from Iran, and she's happy that this was happening right now, because this would be their way to maybe go back to 1979, when this was a
Yeah.
beautiful, prosperous country before they were taking over by the extremists, and they ruined
Yes.
that country, ruined it.
That's right.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
So to say that we're not the ones. We would love to have peace. To this day, in Israel, people are friends. They're Jewish neighbors and Arab neighbors, and some of them friends, some of them are not. But that's just how the world works. So you can't
Yeah.
nitpick and point to, oh, you see that one, they're not good. They don't want this. We're talking about, historically, Israel tried over and over and over to say enough. Let's just come up to some sort of resolution so we can all coexist. Just never.
Yeah.
And I don't know why. I mean, we talked about it a little bit. It really is. It's a very unfortunate kind of hatred that's, you know, Golda Meir, I think I told you that she was a prime minister in the late 70s during also
Mhm.
one of the big wars that happened. Unfortunately, there will be peace in the Middle East when Arabs love their children more than they hate Jews. It's a very strong phrase, but she was right.
That's a good point. Yeah. The blind hatred, you know, there's so many people that deny that October 7th even happened.
Mhm.
And like you say, you have friends, you know, people directly that were raped or killed during that horrific attack, that inhumane. I've heard people that I trust. I absolutely trust these leaders that have personally been over there and seen the destruction, or that have watched the footage from it. From what I understand, Hamas, a lot of them had GoPros, had
Yeah,
cameras on.
that's what that's interesting that you brought that up, Dan. When people say that, and they've said that to me to my face, oh, Israel is good there. They know technology, they made it up. What they really don't understand, the footage that they have was from their cams on that they
Yeah,
wore in their body. Just like
yeah,
Nazis, we why do we know what happened during the World War II? They filmed it all.
yeah,
They did
yeah.
exactly the same thing,
They were
and that's
proud of
another
it.
thing.
Hmm.
They're proud of it, and it drives me crazy when people actually refer to Israel as a Nazi. It's
I
mind-boggling.
know. You said earlier, I thought about, I started to interject, and then I thought, no, Diane, don't do that. But you know what? It keeps coming up in my spirit. I
Yeah,
will interject. I will interject for you. I know this is not something you would say, but I'm going to say it because it needs to be said. People are too ignorant about this issue. People are not informed, and they're not willing to educate themselves about this. And that makes me angry. Don't have an opinion on something that you're not willing to educate yourself about. And I'm just speaking to anyone listening right now, and I would even speak to myself about this if I had not taken the time to look into this deeper. Up until just a few years ago, I didn't know anything about the holy war that's been going over there for years. I didn't know why everyone was fighting and why, it wasn't until because I'm in the political realm, I needed to take a deeper dive. But people who are just living their day to day lives, they don't really feel the need to do that. So they're just kind of blown around by the wind of whatever that propagandist is saying. And as this is a whole different thing, ladies. I'm just going to get on a rant for a second. This is a whole different thing than following the news or following politics. This is so deeply entrenched in our Christian heritage. The Jewish people in Israel are a part of us, and we will answer to God. God said, I will bless those who bless Israel, and I curse those who curse Israel. We have a connection to Israel. So this is not something we can just turn a blind eye to and say, ah, la, 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 I don't want to know about that. No, as a Christian, as a as a follower of Jesus Christ, or even as a Jewish person who is maybe living here in the United States, we don't get to just opt out of this conversation. Maybe you can about other political topics, but this one you need to get educated about. And that's what we're trying to do here today, trying to bring someone in who actually has firsthand knowledge and experience, and actually has family in that area, who actually knows people that were directly related to these attacks. So Eleina, get a little bit, my patience is just running really thin on this issue. And when we see people taking to our streets in America and calling for the destruction of Israel from the river to the sea, when I see what's about to happen in New York with that primary that was just won by a radical Islamic, I mean, in 2001,
and a socialist, by the way.
and I mean, I think he's hardcore communist. I don't even think I
Okay.
think he's way past socialism,
Yeah.
but they are actually going to elect. And I saw one of the women from Sex and the City was
Oh,
did a TikTok video of just encouraging people to go vote for this guy. I mean, we can't afford to be uneducated or to just like I said, to turn a blind eye to this subject. So I'm sorry to get off on my rant. I'm not sorry. I'm not sorry.
but
I'm not sorry.
And I'm so glad you said that too, because, and again, I'm angry, obviously, about the situation, but I guess I just don't want people. I'm at the point where can we just all get along at this point and talk and have a conversation too, But at
Yeah.
the same time, what Christian people also need to understand, this is not a war on Jewish people or Israel. This is a war on infidels. You know who infidels
Yes,
are?
that's right.
Everybody other than one group of people.
That's right.
It's always been
That's
like.
right.
I was
Yeah.
actually listening to interview today of this woman who was her mom was American and married a Muslim man who was very religious, and just talking about her upbringing and what she had gone through because her mom integrated into really like radical. And again, here's the thing, I don't want to say there are wonderful, wonderful Muslim people I personally know. Okay. We are talking about people who are radicalized, who
Yeah.
this view of it's them or nothing.
Yeah.
This is what's happening in Iran.
Yeah.
They are,
And they're infiltrating our country like in droves.
in droves, and God knows how many of them are. Somebody just got arrested today or yesterday, I think, they connected to these sleeper cells that we, I'm sure, have
Yeah.
that kind of stuff.
Yep.
What people need to understand, this is not a hate about towards other people. It's just the problem is with the whole radical system that they've created, that it's them or nobody else, and then it's a virus and it's spreading
Yeah.
wildfire,
That's right.
wildfire, and we need to be very careful because everybody's at risk. It's not just Jewish people. There's not that many of us. It's less than 1% in the world.
Yeah, it
But
is. And I'll tell you, I will say this on camera today, that everyone chanting death to Israel, death to America needs to be put on one of those planes and sent out of here. You cannot coexist with people who want to wipe you off the face of the planet. That is not about, oh, just coexist. Oh, just show them love and compassion. There comes a time, even in the Bible, to show wisdom,
that's
you
right.
know, and wisdom does not mean appeasing evil. It's
That's
not what it means. So I think Christians need to grow more of a backbone. They need to get a lot more vocal. And I think pushing this evil back, there's a time now we have to stand and do that. You can't ride the fence anymore. You can't pretend you didn't hear it. You can't just not choose not to look. It is at our doorstep.
yes,
And it's not about creating fear. This is not about this evil that has been coming for Israel, which now has been set back a great deal. I mean, I want to tell you, Eleina, when I saw those B-2 bombers, could not be more proud of our military. I am so like, oh my gosh, I'm so proud of America for obliterating their nuclear program in Iran.
that's
That
right.
absolutely needed to happen. I am 100% in support of that. And I'm not trying to pull you into my support, but I'm just saying, I'm just speaking for
I'm
myself
in
on
support of that too. There's no doubt.
Okay, so I pull you in. Okay. So you stand with me on that. I mean, that needed to happen because that was absolutely a massive threat to not only Israel, but to us. You
Right.
don't just
Who in
sit
their
there.
right mind thinks that it's okay for a country like Iran, who is run by radicals, to have a nuclear bomb?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's insanity. It's
It's
insanity.
total insane. I just hope and pray that it all done and they don't have any leftovers of anything, that the bomb
They
actually
don't.
got everything. And it was a right move, and this is why I voted for President Trump. I'm so
Yeah.
happy we have somebody in the office who does not. Can you just imagine? I'm trying not to imagine, because that would be a very scary thought if we had the other party
No.
win the.
Let's not even imagine that. I don't even want that up on my
But
mental radar.
no, he does what he does because he loves this country. This is not
Yeah.
people. Oh, he's Israel. He's trying to, like, why would we just want to be like friends with Israel for no just because we want to be friends with Israel? No, this is done for America. People, wake up.
Yeah. Yeah.
With President
Like I said
Trump,
earlier,
yeah, that's right.
even the enemy sees us as connected.
That's right.
So, there's a reason for that. We are God's people. And I totally respect and understand how you're trying to come at this not from a biblical perspective, but from a more modern and factual perspective. I totally get that. I just feel like we can't, I know some people reject hearing the biblical worldview on this, but just from my listeners who are Christians and maybe Jewish women too, but people who love the Lord, we can talk about it amongst ourselves and just say you can't understand this conflict apart from the biblical worldview. It's just, it is a spiritual battle. It's a spiritual war. And no, Donald Trump is not a perfect man, but everybody in the Bible, every hero in the Bible was not, none of them were perfect.
No.
All of them were a hot mess. I mean, you just pick one, they all had their issues. They all had stuff that they use, skeletons in their closet, all of them.
Yeah.
But God uses us as human beings. He uses certain people for key times, for a time such as this. And I believe that Trump is who he is using for such a time as this. And I say, go America with what they just did.
That's right.
In Iran. And I could not have been a more proud American when I saw them carry out that mission. Oh my gosh. It's going to give 4th of July this year a whole new meaning, for us. But anyway, I know we've gone way over, but it was so important. And I thank you so, so, so much, Eleina, for coming in today and just giving us your wisdom and your perspective on this and helping us to humanize the people who live in Israel, the Jewish people there, and understand from their perspective what they're up against. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. It's my pleasure. And thank you so much for having me, Diane. And thank you for all you do.
You're so welcome. You're so welcome. All right, ladies, I hope this has been so helpful for you today. Give me a comment. Let me know what you think, good or bad. Let us hear it, because we want this conversation to be real and to be helpful, like I said, for everyone. So I'd love to hear from you. Till I see you next time, lady up.
Women of America, here's some breaking news. Ain't no cowbrick coming to save the red from the rabid blue. We have the power, time to take the field. Step up and into your ruby red heels. Taking back this house, taking back this town. Mama, don't back down, just lay it